I think there's a bee in here.
There's a bee?
Yeah.
Hold that thought. Morning. We're at the store. Morning coffee, Friday morning, just been test rides. And yeah, there's Palace, Will's Fancy Custom Lambs, which is nice. Four lambs, one disc prototype, and a Palace for good measure. Yeah, coffee. Morning. Not so fruity this morning.
Much less fruity this morning. Yeah, although the granola was pretty good.
It's a strong look though. Are you going to do it properly, or are you just going to do your own thing?
I'm going to do my own thing, as ever. You know me.
What, just because you've got a custom paint job, you think you're all on your own?
Custom everything.
Can we swap these ones? Some nice dusty gravel. Yeah. The problem is, maybe we want to go and do things we should normally be doing on road bike.
That's the whole point. That's what? That's a what?
It's super impressive, isn't it?
It's the impressor of the bike world.
It's the impressor of the bike world. It makes you want to do bad things in the wrong places.
Have a nice weekend.
And you, man. Photo's done. More coffee. Friday lunchtime, busy day. Graham's hanging around on street corners. Waiting for some lunch. We've had some website meetings, some test rides. That's kind of what we do most days, central London on a Friday. If you need test rides and you're central London or the south. Anyway, yeah. So test rides done, a couple of meetings, and now we're here. I'll put a link thing in there. Yeah, we did a video here. Pizza Pilgrims. Best pizza in London. Over the road and sit in the park. Pizza at lunch in the park. Graeme found a pretty wall. Look at that wall, Graeme. Look at that suntan.
Yeah, good. How are you?
Yeah. Well, oh yeah, that picture with you and was it Laura?
No, Michaela, yesterday. Yeah.
In the end, it worked. Everything.
I love it. What I've done with this bike, some people, they were looking at me like, you must be crazy. Some of the roads, they were like, impossible. Yeah. Even the guys, they were getting flat tires. Some of them, they get this completely
Sidewall.
Yeah. Really.
Nice.
Yeah.
We need to see if something clears before we go any further.
Amazing.
when I touch the spokes, but it's not bad for an old one. Have to do loads of new things to sort out. We've got a new version of that needs testing for the weekend.
I read the article. Very good.
Have you seen the GCN video?
No. This one now.
Didn't even spill a drop. Afternoon. As we said at the end of the last video, at the airport in Taipei, we've got something to go over, something to show you, something to share.
I think there's a bee in here.
There's a bee?
Yeah.
Hold that thought. Wasp, it's not a bee. Hello, don't touch those things. Allergic to wasps. Back in the room. Shall I close that so they don't come in?
Yeah, do that.
But it's all fresh air and nice. Closed enough. As you will have seen, as if you'd have watched last week's episode, you would have seen us talk about this. You might have seen it on GCN. You might have seen it on lots of things. This is Pilgrims Project X, the prototype frame, getting ready to be built up. We thought we'd go over this, show you a few details of what we've done, compare it to an old one. Get that seat post from under there. As we were saying, Project Pilgrims X sample. Picked this up in Taipei show last week, and it is the new version of the Pilgrims, which is our all-rounder. First off, on how we're defining it, people have said, is it a gravel bike, is it how big a tyre, all that sort of stuff. The one thing to remember is, when I first came up with this, I kind of defined it as road plus. What it means to Bowman is it's a road bike plus a little bit. So it's a great road bike for all-round road use, but then you can fit slightly bigger tyres on. Up to 32 is a sort of a safe bet. Regularly use it with kind of 30C, Strada Bianchis, Mavics, Panaracers, things like that. So it's a road bike with a little bit more. So that's kind of what Road Plus means to us. As you may have seen in the GCM video, we've moved from a 7000 series to a 6000 series that we've developed already for the Palace R. Originally we'd used 7000 series because it's a little bit tougher, it's a slightly stiffer material, but it's a little bit more resistant to knocks and bangs, and kind of we were thinking if it's off-road we use it for our cyclocross frames. What we found, it was actually a little bit too much for something that was so road focused, so we kind of went more down the Palace route with the new one than the Footscray route. 6000 series, thin wall, triple butted, front triangle, shares a couple of tubes with the Palace, a couple of different butt lengths, things like that. Same seat tube, obviously longer chain stays for disc brakes and more clearance. Seat stays are different, not as flat, not as oval. A lot of that's to do with braking force and what you're trying to resist with twisting with a disc brake as opposed to a caliper brake on the Palace. Head tube's the same, so hydroformed, shaped, thin walls, that sort of stuff. Like the Palace, and like everything we're going to be doing from now on, certainly for the foreseeable future, return of the thread, so threaded BB, every manufacturer makes a crank that fits, bottom brackets are easy to fit. Press fit can work well when it's done well, when it's fitted professionally, but there's so many things that can go wrong and lead to creaks. We just thought home maintenance, home mechanics, fixing it yourself, building it yourself, you're safer with a thread, and with the new manufacturer we're working with now, we can get the clearance we need with a threaded BB. Stability was more of an issue when you're riding off-road, so lower BB lowers the centre of gravity. Longer chainstay gives you a bit more stability anyway, because the back end kicks out a little bit in a less lively fashion. When it goes in a more predictable fashion. Standards of wheel mounting have settled down in the disc world. 12mm through axle at the back, 142 hub spacing, flat mounts, forwards drop out, full cable routing external at the back. So we've got those guides on the chainstay there. Cable routing we kind of ummed and ahed a little bit about. On the Palace we do external, but lots of people, speaking to original Pilgrims customers, a lot of people really liked the weatherproofing of a full cable outer front to back. We're not 100% certain whether we're going to go with these welded in parts or whether we're going to go with an insert a welded hole and an insert rather than the actual welded insert with cable guides built in. I'd quite like to be able to remove those and cover those if you're running electric cables. To get it built up and get the sample done, we've gone full cable run, so 2 holes one side, 1 hole the other, cables in there, fully inside the down tube. The front cable outer will come out and then end at the stop here. Removable cable stop, same cable stop we use on the Palace. There's a hole in there for Di2 if you take it out. And then the outer will run just zip tied on. Really simple, really clean. It definitely feels like it's moved on, and hopefully people see that, think that when they see them. Geometry is identical. These are 2 56cm frames, head tube's the same. I mean, we've gained 5mm of clearance on the top tube, but other than that, absolutely identical. Everyone who's ridden one of the original Pilgrims loves it. We know that that will handle well. It was around 300 grams lighter for the new frame compared to the old one, and the old one, we had one of those built up with like a SRAM red hydraulic group set and some pretty reasonable wheels, aluminium finishing kit, and that weighed just over 8 and a bit kilos, so we should be able to get this down with a high-end build to kind of 7 and a bit, 7.5, without going super fancy. Probably looking at 1250, 1350, something like that, depending on the size and the thickness of the paint. Really, that makes a bigger difference than what some people might think. In terms of tyre clearance, there's 38mm between the chainstays, so there should be plenty of room around a 32C tyre. Oh yeah, one thing you can do is, this was the original fork from the Pilgrims. As we were starting out, we couldn't afford our own fork moulds and do that, so we've got something that was available, and then tweaked small things that we could, and then added our own 3D printed mudguard mounts, which were very effective and quite nice and worked really well. But kind of we wanted to move up and we wanted to gain a little bit more tyre clearance if we could. A year into that process, we started developing our own fork for the first generation Pilgrims, which was sort of very similar shape to the original, just a little bit more curved, a little bit less angular, but 2 or 3 mil more clearance at the crown. This one you could fit far more in there, bigger tyres with mudguards, that sort of thing. And then while we were doing this, we also started looking at 12mm through axle, same forks, mounts, through axle, and a standard version. So we learned quite a lot when we were developing these. When we changed aluminium factories middle of last year, we started working with a new fork vendor. What we learnt from this one, in terms of size, shape, feel, we tried to get a little bit more comfort with the layout, a little bit more of an aesthetic that matched the new frames with the same 12mm through axle, flat mount. So we got that sorted, and then went on from there. Mounts for mudguards, separate bonded in insert at the back, rather than a hole through like we would have on the caliper fork. And we could get a little bit more clearance without ruining the integrity of the fork crown. Mount on the back for a mudguard, same mount on the front for a dynamo mount, something like that. You kind of custom bend your mudguard stays, they're a little bit higher, but it clears any size rotor, any size adapter, so you can have like a 140, 160 post mount caliper on an adapter on the flat mount fork, and it still clears. If you start having this too low, what we found with the other fork is if you start having the mounts too low, they can start interfering with that sort of stuff. Fork development, there's another couple of iterations in there, and one of the reasons it is very road focused, rather than it being something like, say, this is the Footscray fork. You can see that one's very different lengths. This is road fork 375 or 380, cyclocross fork, it's 400 long, and obviously you can't get the same trail and feel. You can't get the same feel out of a long fork, no matter what head angle and what fork rake you use. You can't get the same feel as you can with a shorter fork, and in order to get it to feel like a road bike when you're running skinny tyres, you can't really go more than 380, which is one of the reasons it's ended up with 32C tyres really as our maximum size, because that's about as big as you can go on a 380 fork. Just need to get this built up now. Can you remember anything, Graeme, that I haven't said so far?
We've got name, we've got colour.
We've got the same flare square seat tube and the same braze-on front mech. So it's very much a road focused bike, so I was I was less bothered by the fact that if you're running it one by, it's going to look a bit weird, because there's not that many people that are going to be running road bikes one by, in my opinion. Off-road very much makes sense. I loved the one by on the Footscray when I was doing stuff, either racing or going off into the hills. Welded in, not bonded. Obviously, any questions, usual email, questions, comments down below. Give us a shout, ask anything if you want to know anything. Yeah, and sign up. You can go onto the website, bowman-cycles.com, and there's a Project Pilgrims X page there. Information there about how to sign up to make sure you're added to the mailing list. We're looking at full production colour samples in the UK in the middle of May, at which point that's roughly when we're looking at doing sign up. So yeah, until then.